Hi everybody, my name is Bert van Gestel and I'm going to do a talk about control add-ins today. And we're going to be using the JavaScript version. I've a little warning for you. Please everybody keep your phones close because there is some beer to be won during this talk. That is of course because we can't do this in real time, and then I would have bought you all a beer. But let's make the best of it and try to do it this way. My talk is about control add-ins, and that's all about integration. I have been integrating stuff with Business Central, Navision, and Dynamics all my professional career. It's all begun with this little document, and it's also the title of my talk. Talking with Navision, say hello to Navision and expect Navision to be polite. It's by Manuel Oliveira from Microsoft, and he wrote it in 2015. In 2015, it was CFront and OCXs and COM that you needed to use to do your integrations. Then Microsoft took over, and we kept that API for a while. That was 2015. Then the entire .NET thing started to happen, and we wanted .NET components to be integrated into our clients. That's when we started wrapping .NET components in COM components. But stuff got a lot better, a lot quicker. And that's when the new Windows client, or the RTC, popped up, and we had the option to just use the .NET controls. That you had access to an entire library of stuff. Nowadays, for Business Central, the BC SaaS cloud, we only have access to JavaScript controls anymore. But actually, in the beginning, I was rather sad about this because I like .NET a lot, and I had a lot of experience there. But actually, then I came across this law, and it's Atwood's law, and it states that any application that can be written in JavaScript will eventually be written in JavaScript. This is something really great, and we'll look into that a little later, because practically everything that you want to do in a control add-in possibly already has been done by somebody. If that is, and it goes from very banal to very crazy stuff, like you can do machine learning in JavaScript, you can do 3D games in JavaScript, you can do simulations, you can do everything your heart desires. So keep this in mind. My talk is basically, we're not going to go into JavaScript a lot. It's basically about how you integrate JavaScript with Business Central, but this is to give you an idea about what it would take for you to learn to be a front-end developer, to get your hands-on experience with JavaScript. It starts with simple things like HTML, and you end up doing complex stuff using Angular or web assemblies or all kinds of crazy patterns that exist in the front-end world. If you want to look into this, there's a great site to learn all about JavaScript and the ecosystem around it. It's frontendmasters.com/books. There's this book, the Front-End Developer Handbook for 2019, and it will get you up to speed pretty quickly. Then I said there was some stuff to be won during this talk. The first thing we're going to do with JavaScript is a hello world. What you see on the screen right now isn't a JavaScript hello world, but it's the first instance of hello world that's known. and it was in a document called a tutorial introduction to the language. And this is the first quiz part. Is it the language A, the language B, or the language C that's used here? So take your time to put that in the chat, and we'll see who knows. Then we can just jump into the demos rather quickly, because we have a lot of them. For the demos, we're going into Visual Studio Code, and my first demo is a simple hello world. What do you need for that? It's a simple JavaScript function. We're going to get an element inside of our web client, and that element is called control add-in. Microsoft has put it for us, there for us, and we're going to replace it with a text hello world. So this is basically the JavaScript. To get this to integrate with Business Central, we need something that's called a control add-in. A nice thing to know or to note about this is that control add-ins are the only object that don't have an ID coupled to them. And they give us the embedding functionalities, so like how big does this control add-in need to be, and they allow us to attach a script to the control add-in. For example, here we've attached control add-in.js, and that's the control add-in that I showed you earlier. And then a control add-in is very much like an interface, but a visual one. So here we've created a page with a very simple layout. It only has a user control, and the user control is of the type hello1. And hello1 is a control add-in, actually the control add-in we just created. If you go and look inside of Business Central, I'll refresh this for you. You can note that Docker containers aren't very fast, but eventually they will show you what you need to know. So here's the hello world part. The nice thing about Chrome is that you also have a debugger. When you want to find the script, it's inside here. Then you go down there within the resources and inside of the extracted resource, and this is our script again. You can debug that in here. Then let's quickly move to something a little bit more complicated, but still very approachable. Let's go to hello2. This control add-in has a function. It's the init function, and when you init it, it's going to do the same thing as we saw before. It's going to print hello world, and we have put a button in there, a function in there. And what this function does is it finds the same control add-in spot, and it attaches a JavaScript button to it. So when we call this function, a button will appear. To that function, we added an event listener on the click event, and when that happens, some little magic happens, and inside of Microsoft Dynamics NAV, the invoke extensibility method will be called, and we'll see what that does a little bit later. And the method we will call is the on button click, and we will allow a text to scroll and to go in there as a parameter. So let's look at the control add-in that's connected to that. So it's the same all the way around. But what you see here is that there's a procedure and an event. And this procedure we can call, and it will call the same method signature inside of JavaScript. And the other way around, when we call the event, the method in JavaScript to trigger an event inside of Business Central, then this event will trigger. When we look at the page that's connected to that, you see we still have the user control in there. We have the the control in there. And what we see is when you click that button, then, oh, sorry, here we've created a function, create function, and when we run, and when we click that create function, we want the current page.hello2, so that refers to the user control, to be called, and you call the function create button on there. Actually, this is supported by IntelliSense as well, so the create button will appear there. Then we have a button and we want to call back, and that's done by the trigger on button click that we created on this user control, and that will show the message that we created inside of JavaScript. Let's look how that works in the real time. So here we have the action with the function, and we can press the create button. This is where the button pops up, and once we press that, there's a message from Business Central saying hello from JavaScript. Okay, that's the second part. Now let's try and do something a little bit more advanced. So we go into our hello tree function, and what we did here is we wanted to have this little piece of JavaScript. What this does is it finds the control add-in and puts a canvas on the spot of that control add-in. And then it calls back and it says this control add-in is ready. So we get an event inside of Business Central. Then we wanted to create QR codes. And the nice thing, remember Atwood's law, if something can be done in JavaScript, it will be done in JavaScript. And the website you go to find all of this goodness is npmgs.com. For example, if we search for QR codes, you'll find a nice library that does QR codes, and they also put in a nice explanation on how to use it. You might recognize the canvas that we talked about earlier right here. So in order to get that control add-in connected to your to get that stuff in the QR code stuff, down here in the terminal, you browse to your hello world, your hello folder, and you use this command npm install, and then the folder where you want to install it, minus save, and then the name of the npm library that we just found. What we then need to do is make sure that we include our control add-in script, but also include the QR code GS model code inside of there. And this allows us to, in this control add-in, like we did before, have a create QR function which takes in a message, and that finds the canvas and puts the QR code in there with the QR code containing the message. So let's look how this integrates into Business Central. So here we have the hello tree control add-in. Again, we have the procedure create QR and the event control ready. So when we look at the page, you'll see that once the user control triggers the control ready event, we're going to put in a surprise QR code with a surprise message in there. Let's see how that turns out. If we go to our Hello. Okay. I hope this everybody can scan this one inside from the video. Especially you can see that in here in the we still have the control add-in.js in there with our nice create QR function, and we also have the node modules in there. In this case, with the QR code GS that we imported from npm. But what I personally find a little bit annoying, or a little bit not that fun about this, is that you need to know what's inside of your control add-in at compile time, because this gets packaged together with your app, and inside of your app the control add-in needs to be, and the modules need to be. But wouldn't it be a lot nicer if we could just host this control add-in on our own website, for example? So I looked into that, and actually that's possible. So what you need to do for that is we need to create our own website to start off with. And the easiest way to do that is through Azure. And in Azure you can create a blob storage account, or a blob storage account. And there's an option in there, and that's called static website. When you enable this, you get a nice URL at which you can make a host your website if you if you upload your files in there. And this one will trigger an index.html as the default page. If we browse to this website, we get a nice QR code there, and that's because that's the code I've put on that website. Actually, there's a nice way from Visual Studio Code to get it there. So, for example, this here, the BC static text static is the website. It has an index.html with a script that with the canvas in there again, and with a script that creates QR code with the message empty in it. And it has something here, and that's called post to parent, and that's a function that we've added for later on when we are going to embed this inside of Business Central. And actually, what it does, I can show you here in the scripts folder. What it does is it uses the post message API from the browser, and it posts to the parent. In this case, we're going to run this inside of an iframe, so Business Central will be the parent of that iframe, and we're going to put the message type and the data through for some security reasons, and you can read into that. It's called CORS, or course. We need to put a star here to make it work. So let's take we've already taken a look at it, and we have a nice nice QR code here, but then how do we get that inside of Business Central? So let's go to the control add-in again. The first thing we have in here is a connect function. And with this connect function, we can put in a link, a website link, and this will create an iframe inside of our at our control add-in location, and that iframe will be will have as a source the link we've put to it. Also, we want to add some event listeners to our page, especially to the message function. That's the same one that's connected to the message API I pointed to earlier, that the post message tries to find. What this does, it's when somebody posts something to that message API, we get the type of message out of there. In this case, it's connected, and we put this into Business Central as an event. Also here we have the create QR method, but this time it's not going to call a function inside of our control add-in, but it's going to post down to the iframe, and it's going to post the create QR message, create QR function with this with the message that we put in as a parameter. It's the same thing, except here we're going for the iframe, the window inside of the iframe. We're going to post a message to there. Actually, here the course stuff pops up again as well. So this one, the create QR, post to iframe. Post to iframe does the post message, which does the message start with the data. And here inside of our JavaScript, in here, we see that the create QR, it arrives here again, and it triggers our create QR message, our create QR function, which will put the correct QR code in there. So let's have a look at the control add-in itself. Now we have a connect procedure and a create QR procedure. We have a control ready event and a connected event. In the page, the flow goes as follows. The control add-in gets loaded, so that's when the iframe is there. Then the control ready event triggers, and we say connect the iframe to this web page that we created a few minutes back. Once that happens and the web page is loaded, we get the connected event back from that web page. So it's coming from the web page that's running inside of the Azure blob. And then we can call the create QR function again on the control add-in. And the control add-in will call the GS script of the control add-in, and that will post to the iframe to create a QR code. So actually here we have the entire interface that we need in there. And there's going to be a surprise again. So when we go in here and we run our hello 4 page, we're going to get a nice QR code again that everybody can scan, but this time the PC control add-in will be it has an iframe and it's pointing towards the web.core.windows, and in there we have our scripts, we have our nodes, and we have our hello world stuff in there, and we can debug it and use it as we like. Then we're out of time, but you can imagine a lot of advanced use cases. For now, for example, I've put the code. It's inside of the cloud, but I could also place it on a local web server on a local machine. For example, if there's a scale or some other piece of hardware that you want to integrate with, because the JavaScript is running inside of the company. So if you say connect to localhost or connect to some local site, it will be possible. You could also go for some more complex stuff, like now we have a simple JavaScript, but you can have an entire Angular website, for example, in there. You can go for TypeScript, you can go for all kinds of stuff. Just like Atwood's law says, the entire world is there for you. Let me see if there's anything else I need to mention to you. No, I think we can conclude here. I will be available inside of the chat for a little Q&A later on. I hope you've enjoyed this little fast presentation about control elements, and see you in a few minutes.